Some people say money cannot buy happiness, but I'm here to tell you that if you have money, you'll be able to solve all your money problems. I've been teaching here in Vietnam for almost 6 years and I've been able to achieve some financial milestones. And I think it will be prudent for me to share some of the strategies I use to achieve these financial goals. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how I save as an international teacher. Let's get started. To begin with, I set realistic goals and break these goals down into monthly achievable targets. When I first came here to Vietnam in July 2019, I told myself that I'm going to get myself a motorbike after 1 year. I'm going to get a better phone after 1 year. And I also told myself I'll save towards my first vacation after 1 year. So these were my 3 goals back then in 2019 to 2020, and I was able to achieve them. I was able to achieve them because I had these realistic goals back then, considering my circumstances back then, and I was able to achieve them. So in November 2020, I bought my first iPhone 11 Pro Max. Prior to that, in July 2020, I bought my motorbike, and in July 2020, I went on my first vacation to Phu Quoc, one of the most beautiful islands here in Vietnam. In fact, that is my favorite place to visit. So to be able to achieve some financial milestones, you should set realistic goals and then break these goals down into achievable monthly targets. For instance, if you intend to save $10,000 at the end of December 2025, you would have to save at least $833 per month. Or if you receive 11 salaries in a year, you would have to save $909 or $910 per month in order to eventually save $10,000 at the end of December 2025. So whatever your realistic goal is, you break it down into achievable monthly targets, and that will help you draw closer to your financial targets. Point number 2, I create realistic monthly budgets. I set aside money to cater for rent, for food, for transport, for entertainment. If I want to buy perfumes, I set aside money for that every month. That is, if I want to buy a perfume in a month, I set aside money for that. And also I set aside money for remittances. I carefully create this monthly budget to cover these expenses because I know I'll be incurring them in the month. I know my spending habits. I know how much I spend on these things. So creating this monthly budget becomes very easy for me. So if you want to also achieve some financial milestones, you should write down these expenses that you make in every month: your rent, your food, your transport. If you do any form of entertainment, you just save money towards that. If you are like me and send money back home for remittances, you save money or you set aside some budget for that. And if maybe you consume alcohol, you set aside money for that. I do not drink alcohol, so of course I don't set aside money for that. So I always create realistic monthly budgets to cover my expenses every month, and this helps me to achieve my financial goals every year. That is, if I have any of these goals running. Point number 3 is I set aside money for emergencies. Financial experts tell us that you should save some amount of money equivalent to 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses for emergencies, so that whenever you have one, you do not touch your savings, but you go into your emergency fund to offset some of these emergency expenses. So I set aside some money for emergencies, and it helps me, to save or not touch the monies or my monthly targets, and it helps me to reach my financial goals in time. During COVID 2020, I was still able to achieve my goals because of this emergency fund that I had back then. During COVID, I was lucky to have had my salary slashed into half, and I knew so many people who had no salaries during COVID, and it can be very difficult. I'm very sure you experienced a similar thing during COVID, or if you are lucky, you probably didn't experience anything like that. But I know so many people who had no salaries during COVID. So if such people had saved some money for emergencies, they would have been able to live or survive during COVID. But the point here is, whenever you are planning to save, if you have financial goals to save money, you should save some money too for emergencies, so that when these emergencies arise, you'll be able to offset these expenses and not go into your savings. So emergency fund is important. Point number 4 is difficult for many people, but I do it anyway. That is to live by design, not by default. This means that I plan everything that I do, especially when it comes to spending money on that. I do not buy on impulse, or I do not buy because I'm influenced by people around. I plan and intentionally buy the things that I need or want, and I make sure they do not eat into my emergency funds, or they do not eat into the monthly target that I've set myself to save towards my eventual annual financial goal. So it is very important to live by design, not by default. I do not randomly go out to buy expensive drinks because my friends are doing it, or because I was invited by some friends. I do not do that. If I'm going to spend some amount of money on anything out with some friends, it should come from the entertainment money that I've set aside for that month. If I realize this is going to go beyond that, I do not do it, and I do not have to explain myself to anybody. These are my financial targets and they are personal. So I live my life by design, not by default. I do not buy stuff because people will say you look good or something. I buy stuff because I feel good in them and I use them. I hope you get the point. So if you want to achieve any financial goal, you should try as much as possible to live by design and not by default. The next point, which is closely related to the last point I raised, is I try as much as possible to avoid lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation is simply increasing your spending habits because your income has also increased. This goes especially to teachers who have assumed their first international teaching roles. Normally, this international teaching roles comes with higher salaries compared to the salaries these teachers were receiving back in their home country. That was the same situation I was in July 2019. But I avoided lifestyle inflation. I lived within my means. I avoided luxury goods. I treated treats as treats. That is, going out to a fancy restaurant to eat is a treat, and I treat it as such. I do not do that every day. Sometimes I just do it once a month, or zero a month. I just lived within my means. I didn't buy it, or I don't buy it more than I can chew. So I just avoid lifestyle inflation as much as possible. So if you intend to save or reach any financial goal, you should avoid lifestyle inflation. The last point I'd like to raise in this video is I track my expenses. I try as much as possible to look at my spending habits in a month. I use an app called Achabu to record all my expenses in a month, and I'm able to tell where my money is going in a month. And I read this thing, I study them, and I try as much as possible to avoid some unnecessary expenses in subsequent months. And this helps me to save more, or even have more money for entertainment or for the things that I want to do without touching my emergency funds or the monthly saving targets that I plan to save. So it is very important to track your expenses, and this can help you to reach your financial goals quickly. So basically that's what I do. And as much as possible, whenever I get the opportunity to earn extra income, that is by doing extra classes or doing private tutoring, I do it because that will make you get more money and help you to save more money. So basically, these are the things I do to save every time I have any financial goals. I did the same thing for my motorbike, for my first iPhone, for my current iPhone, what I'm using to record this video now. I used the same strategies to pay for my fees during Moreland University days. And if you check, you realize that the fees are not cheap. They are quite expensive. So I do all these things in order to save or achieve any financial goal that I have. Thank you for watching this video up to this point. If you found value in it, I would appreciate you like, you comment, and then you share. And most importantly, please subscribe to the channel. And I'd like to know your thoughts. Does any of the things I mentioned in this video resonate with you? Do you do any of them? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Is there any other strategy you use to save money or to reach any financial goal? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And what else? I think that's it for now. I'll see you in my next video. I wish you a happy new year. Bye-bye.